class. This is your professor, Dr. Brian Lippincott, and I want to give you a little lecture about my work with James Hillman, the founder of Archetypal psychology and a colleague of Jung's and a lot of famous Jungian analysts. And while I was at Pacifica, we had James Hillman as a visiting professor. We had Marion Woodman, the founder of Authentic Movement. We had Christine Downing, who was the great mythologist, and just a lot of other people, Ernest Rossi, on and on. So I was lucky to have a relationship with James Hillman and had some personal experiences and that helped me understand some of his philosophy. And he was really a psychologist that was interested in the soul and how our soul is impacted by all the things that are going on in our world, which we're really experiencing that a lot today. And James Hillman was really into poetics and magical realism and that kind of stuff. So I'm kind of using a model of magical realism here. And you can see the gods up here. And wherever James Hillman was, these are where the gods are. And this is a representation of our campus at Pacifica, which was a wonderful place. But we have the gods up here. Here we have Hermes, Zeus. This looks like Aphrodite. We are indeed such stuff as dreams are made on. And that's James Hillman. He's quoting Shakespeare in that, but that is a wonderful idea of that we are dreams. And this is me giving the lecture to you, talking a little bit about analytical psychology and James Hillman's work. Welcome to Analytical Psychology. Today, we will not look at data or diagnostic manuals. We'll look at the soul. And I consider myself a scholar mystic. Dr. Lippincott recounts his time sitting with his mentor, the revolutionary James Hillman. Hillman dismantled the traditional therapy at the time, moving it away from the clinical models of Freud and returning it to the humanities, art, and poetry. And Hillman was all about the image. He was a very intuitive man, and imagery was his really his whole thing that he dealt with. Okay, so here we see me and Hillman sitting on a bench at Pacifica and discussing, and this is the tree of life, the Anima Mundi coming out, and this is an acorn here with the whole world in it. And Hillman had this theory of the Acorn Theory where we all had this inner true self, this inner guardian angel, or he called it the daemon, which is like Socrates' daemon. Socrates' daemon always told him, don't do that, don't do that. But your daemon is this kind of angel that's pulling you forward, because Jungian psychology and Hillman psychology are teleological. They're not reductionistic like Freud, reducing everything to your history or your traumas and things that happened to your past. But James Hillman really believed that there was a self that was out there ahead of us. So an end result, teleological, going towards end results. We're being pulled forward by our future, according to James Hillman. We're not being pushed forward by our past. We're being pulled forward by our greater self. Now, the Acorn Theory, Hillman explains that we are not just the sum of our genetics and upbringing. The nature versus nurture debate is fundamentally incomplete. And in his book, The Soul's Code, each person was born with a unique daemon. Not demon, daemon. That's your inner self. That's your self, your true higher self. An innate destiny or calling. Okay, it's like you walk up to a carpenter working on a project and he says, "Oh, I'm building this house." Then that's a man with a job. Then you have a man with a career. You walk up to him and he's building something. He says, "I'm building a church. My whole thing is to build churches. That's my career. I'm moving up in the system." And then you have a man with a calling who says, "I'm building the house of God." Okay, that's the daemon that's calling us forward. It resists compromising reasonableness and often forces deviance to ensure the individual become the oak tree that they were meant to be. And sometimes we don't like it. Sometimes our calling, I wanted to be an astronaut. but I was colorblind and I wore glasses. So I had an appointment to the Naval Academy, but I couldn't get in because of that. And I wanted to land on aircraft carriers because that at the time in the 70s, that was the quickest way to become an astronaut, is to become a test pilot for the Navy and land on aircraft carriers. But because I couldn't do that, I wound up at St. Mary's, which I'll tell some other stories about that later. But I wound up at St. Mary's, and I felt like that's when I became a therapist, which is my true calling. Instead of going into outer space, I learned to study inner space with James Hillman. So the task, and here's the tree, it shows Jung always talked about the rhizome. And we know even forests now can communicate. Trees can communicate with each other by all the fungus and the root system, and all the little things that are living here are carrying messages. And this is the true self that is growing out of that. That's our relationship is growing. The task is to bring the soul's innate potential out of an invisible, ideal realm and to make a place for it among the rough and tumble realities of mundane life. So this is the outer life, the crystal and the strangeness. This is the real roots that you have, the work that has to do to really bring the soul's innate potential out of a person. The reversal of growth. Hillman sharply, very sharply, critiques modern developmental psychology's obsession with getting better, self-improvement, and ascending to spiritual perfection. You can't be perfect. You're never going to get there. So that's the spiritual perfection there, that he's trying to deconstruct that idea that you can be perfect. We all have flaws, and in fact, our flaws are what really makes us human and are some of the greatest benefits. And sometimes our traumas. We now know about, because of Hillman and others, post-traumatic growth. I've had so many of my interns come, and I used to do all the admissions interview at JFK for 10 years, and students would come and say, I'm a victim of trauma. I was victimized, and therefore I think I want to be a therapist. And then throughout the program, they would change, and they would say, I'm a survivor of trauma. I survived it. I'm a survivor. And you see how that language indicates the changes they made by going into their psychology in the program of becoming a therapist. A lot of them, by the time they leave, they come to me and they say strange things like, Brian, I'm actually, all that stuff I told you that happened to me, all that complex PTSD, I'm actually glad that that stuff happened to me, because now I'm in a position where I'm a thriver, where I can help other people now because I can understand what they went through. I can have empathy for them. So they're actually moving to the role of a thriver, which is post-traumatic growth now, growing downward. The true psychological development is the catabasis, the mythological descent. So not up here all in the top part of the thing. You got to go down here to the roots and get into the stuff that's down there, all the fertilized stuff, all the fermented stuff, all the stinky stuff. The soul's true movement is downward into the values, entangling with the messiness, stickiness, and the shadows of everyday life. That was, Hillman said that a lot. Monotheism versus polytheism here. So how do we think about the self? Is it a group of parts, or is it a central figure, a heroic figure? The psyche is not only multiple, it is a communion of many persons. Here you see that. Each with its specific needs, fears, longings, and language. So Hillman was more actually on the polytheistic side. Actually, Jung, raised in his father and all of his grandfather were all ministers. Jung actually was more, believed that the self was a central figure. But there are different ways of looking at it. Both are probably true from a certain point of view. The heroic ego, monotheism, seeks cures and fixes, demands singleness of meaning, battles the unconscious dragon, strives for upward perfection. And that when you go see a doctor, that's what doctors do things. They want to fix it. They want to get you done with it. Sometimes when you're going through the valley, walking through the valley of the shadow of death, you need a nurse. And Hillman was more uh, into the feminine and the nurse side. When you that's the person who's not trying to fix you, not doing tests to you, not doing poking you and prodding you. They're walking with you. They're holding your hand through the pain. The archetypal soul, polytheism, honors and explores symptoms, embraces multiple ambiguities, which we all have as people. If you saw me playing with my little 1-year-old granddaughter and you saw me at a 49ers football game, you would think it was two totally different persons. Those are just some of, or me teaching this class is a totally different person. And it descends willingly, the soul descends willingly into the vales, the valleys. And Hillman wrote a famous paper on hills and valleys, okay, the ups and downs of life, and accepts a pantheon of conflicting inner voices. And this is also, now we're moving into some of the newer theories are borrowing on Hillman's ideas, like internal family systems is one, that we're all parts. There's a family system of parts inside of us. And here's Hillman, and this is the hand of God coming out all the autumn to give subjectivity and intentionality to a noun. The noun takes on consciousness. It becomes personified. So the first, Hillman goes through 4 stages of his therapy and of his soul making. The first is personifying. The psyche operates like a dream where absolutely everything is alive and autonomous. The world is alive. Words are persons. By giving our complexes, moods, and environment subjectivity, thinking of them as a person, like my anima, or my feminine side, or my angry side, or my warrior side, or whatever, we establish a relationship with the psyche's natural multiplicity. Rather than treating the world as dead matter, the world is watching back. This is the eye of the world watching us back. And my sister, who's 12 years older than me, when I was a little 3-year-old, we were drinking tea one day, and she said, "Brian, do you know that some big, huge God could be up there drinking a cup of tea, and we could be just one little molecule in his cup of tea?" And it's just like, I think I was too young to realize what was really going on with that. Now, this is the psyche, the growth of the psyche, and the berries and all the depth coming out of this formed crystal. The psyche's autonomous. It's a self-moving thing. The psyche exists in itself. It's a part of us, but it's much greater than us. The psyche's autonomous ability to create illness, morbidity, disorder is actually good. The psyche does not exist without pathologizing. So this is the second movement, pathologizing. Hillman fiercely argues against the medical model and seeks to immediately eradicate symptoms and fix the machine that's making the system. The medical model is always trying to fix you. Hillman is more like the nurse. Remember that as a thing. And here's me looking over Hillman's shoulder there. The soul literally needs to pathologize, to make sickness, to break free from the heroic ego's tyranny. If everything's always going good for you, that's truth. When you get sick, that's the psyche trying to fix things and correct things, but from the inside. Sickness, depression, and abnormality are necessary, authentic ways to open up to new psychological meanings. So sickness is a path towards growth. Afflictions point to gods. Gods reach us through our afflictions. So here's a person in the hospital, and here's a god, an unnamed god. We don't see who it is. It looked like a male god, but looks like Zeus to me, but we don't get to see that top. The god in the disease. And Oswald writes about this when it comes in about Hillman's ideas about this. This is Hillman, and he's looking at me. I'm a little older than I was at the time. And at the core of every psychological complex is an archetypal figure demanding our attention. At the core of every psychological complex, every problem we have is an archetypal figure demanding our attention. There's a God calling us, you know, uh, I have panic disorder because I'm being taken over by Pan. Okay, I have an addiction because I'm being taken over by Dionysus. Restoring the symptom. When we stop trying to rapidly cure a symptom and instead personify it, we find the archetype. Who is it? We restore the disease to its God, transforming meaningless clinical suffering into a profound relational encounter. And here's Hillman like critiquing me on not doing enough work to really understand what he's talking about. And called me in and had a separate meeting. Okay, now here we have Hermes, the Hermetic lens, and the political deadlock, and here we have the war going on. And there was a lot of wars going on, and Hillman wrote an excellent book about war that is very, very interesting. In his Soul Code, he also talks about Hitler, and he really analyzes his daemon. By treating the words we use as ambiguities, seeing them again as metaphors, we restore them to their original mystery. So that's movement number 3, psychologizing. And you see him looking with a little magnifying glass. That's the art of seeing through the symptom of pathologizing into the psychological meaning that symptom had us. And it might be this trauma that I had as an adolescent, as a youth, is now moving me on to become a therapist so I can use psychologizing to help other people through post-traumatic growth. Beyond the literal. What does that mean? Literalism is the enemy of the soul. We must not take the world, our anger, or our dogmas literally. The Hermetic lens strips away literal facts to reveal the underlying archetypal fantasy driving our thoughts and behaviors. See, Hillman was always relating to this magical world, this inner world, this psychic world. As he was there lecturing, he was up into all this, and he was drawing us all into it. You see how wrapped with attention. I think this one is me right here. I'm wrapped with attention with that. Psychological creativity concerns the soul as opus, the magnum opus. Our whole work is to follow the calling of our daemon and our soul forward and create soul and make soul in our life. The experience of life is a mythical enactment. You're enacting a myth in your life. And the final movement is dehumanizing. The ultimate goal of soul making, stripping away the hubris of the human-centric ego. So dehumanizing and allow the God within us to come out. The mystic tapestry. We must realize that we are merely enacting mythical patterns. We do not contain the psyche. We are in the psyche. We don't contain the psyche contains us. The soul, he would say that many times. The soul, not the literal human, is the true focus of destiny. And at Pacifica, we're in a town called Carpinteria, which is right down there by Santa Barbara. And Hillman would always walk with us. It was walking distance down to the beautiful beach where Kevin Costner's house was. But we would sneak onto the beach. Hillman had some of his best talks on the walks to the beach, which taught me about nature therapy. And he was really, this was a beautiful thing. Now, at the time, there were all these out there oil derricks, but that was taken out of the picture. And this is the world. Let us imagine the Anima Mundi. Anima means soul. Mundi means world in Latin. Anima Mundi is the soul of the world. The world, the actual physical world, has a soul. And we're raised paradise, put up a parking lot. This is the real nature that's in all of our souls. And this is Hillman and I walking in Santa Barbara. Hillman loved yogurt, and there was a really good yogurt place down there that we would all go to. The Anima Mundi, soul of the world, Hillman completely rejects the Cartesian, Descartes, the Cartesian, Descartesian divide that isolates the human mind from the natural environment. We are a part of this whole, and he was really into Zen and oneness, the ensouled environment, the actual environment. And he believed everything had a life to it. That's Jung's theory of the psychoid level. The very, very, even below the collective unconscious is this objective psyche, the psychoid level. The world itself is ensouled. Psychological health is inextricably linked to ecological health, both our own inner ecology and the world's outer ecology, which we're really, and Hillman really championed. He was really worried about the environment, and now he would even be more worried. He died in 2011. Therapy must leave the sterile consulting room and treat the environment. And he would always go out places with us and do things with us. Animals are the great instructors. They bring an instinctual intelligence. Yes. And we have lost contact with our instinct that human consciousness desperately needs to recover. And Hillman saw something. When I talked to you about my own life, this is me as a child, my inner child. And Hillman reached out and was close to all of us and helped me reclaim, seeing Hillman and talking to him and learning from him, helped me reclaim some of the father projections. I had an alcoholic father, and he was a World War II vet in South Pacific. And there was a lot of trauma in our household, and Hillman helped redo that for me just in his corrective emotional experience of him as a person. Tying his childhood fascination to African animals to the Anima Mundi, Hillman explains the beast represents the untamed imagination. So my childhood fascination with African animals and Tarzan, Hillman utilized that. He got to know me and utilized that to explain and talk about animals and how, as we kill the animals are screaming out throughout the world in people's dreams. And Hillman collected dreams from so many people, was able to see this trend. The instinctual world soul. They are the vital, breathing soul of the world, watching us and demanding that we recognize the instinctual intelligence existing completely outside the human ego. We need to think about the world. We need to think about the animals and allow them to have places to live and be safe and not in zoos and like being pinned down like they're butterflies in a net being studied. Okay. And again, you can see the cauldron, the heating up of the alchemical thing, the eye, the blue fire, which Hillman wrote a great article on called The Blue Fire. It was a book of all his ideas about the soul. To be in soul is to experience the fantasy in all realities and the basic reality of fantasy. Right? He believed that what we think of as fantasy in a poetry was that's why we have Jungian-based arts research now. Susan Rowland and all her work, which I will talk about, who's one of my teachers. Susan Rowland and she came to Pacifica after I was there, but I got to know her in other ways. And she is kind of the developer of Jungian-based arts research, where you can actually do research by poetry. The synthesis, a blue fire, the hottest fire. These four movements are not linear mechanical steps. They are interconnected alchemical processes operating simultaneously at the same time. So pathologizing, personifying, dehumanizing, all these things are happening all at the same time, and we're in and out of that. It seems like they're developmental stages, just like the stages of alchemy, the Negredo, the Abedo, the Centrinides, Rubedo, the Reddening, all those, they happen all at once, and we go in and out of them all the time. But we like to think of them, and the easiest way to teach that is through stages. Okay, forging soul in the alchemical fire. Together, they forge soul. True psychological faith means honoring the deep, imaginative, continuous process. over the desperate modern search for quick cures and fixes. We're all about getting life hacks now. I'm going to use this supplement, or I'm going to do this. And some flow scientists, not Kotler and Csikszentmihalyi and others, but some that are really into all these hacks. Here's Hillman. And this here is in real life, me reading Hillman's obituary, The Departure. Hillman lived from 26 to 2011. And this was me reading Hillman's obituaries, remembering his manner as a revolutionary scholar mystic. It is the soul, free of theological demands, that cries to remain restless. It never settles. And I can see Hillman with all the gods now up there, and sometimes I feel like I can channel him, or I can feel him, his voice talking to me. A restless legacy. Hillman dismantled traditional materialistic psychiatric nosology. He just tore the DSM up. He restored wonder, loss, and non-literalism, proving that psychology ultimately belongs more to the arts and humanities than to clinical science. So there's an art. That's why it's an art to do specially psychotherapy. Oh, here we got one more. Oh, this is the closure. And this is Hillman. This is Jung's Red Book. And this is Hillman's Acorn Theory, which now we're all studying the Red Book. And we even have the Black Books now. I'm working on doing it. I'm reading, they're 5 volumes, thousands of pages long. Jung's Black Books, which are his original. The Red Book was his final journal. But now we get to see all the early journals. The soul is less an object of knowledge than it is a way of knowing the object, way of knowing knowledge itself. So that's transcendent function there that Jung talked about, but Hillman really carried it on. And this is me with my students. Dr. Lippincott's final lesson to the class. We honor James Hillman, not by turning his words into rigid dogma, but by living poetically. That's why I consider myself a poet. And I've got a few published, but the poet is really a spirit that takes over me. And my poems come out, I don't have any poems, and all of a sudden, in 15 minutes, the whole 3-page poem will fall out of me. It's just like almost like I'm taken over by the spirit. The soul's code. Look through the hermetic lens, the lens of Hermes, the trickster, respecting the gods hiding in your afflictions, the pains and the aches and the hurts. Above all, fiercely protect the unique, strange code written within your soul's acorn. That's Hillman's Acorn Theory. We start off as a little acorn, and we don't know what that oak tree is going to be, but it's pulling us forward to that big, huge oak. Mine's a little bit gnarled now, but it's still an oak. I'm trying to always find my true self and live more fully. That's why I wrote a book. I don't know how much that my soul has in there, but it felt like a lot. Thank you very much, class. I'm going to stop the recording so you can ask questions about this, and we can have a discussion about that, and you can feel comfortable. But thank you very much. Again, this is Brian Lippincott signing off. I'm the author of Analytical Psychology and Family Systems, Neo-Jungian Practice to help families find flow.